Can you see the screen?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. So good afternoon, everyone. I think excellent to have all of you on the call. And on behalf of Microsoft, and I think Ollie as well, I hope all of you are staying at home, staying safe. These are really unprecedented times, but I think just getting fairly quickly to the context of the conversation. Clearly, there is, my keynote is really around digitally transforming your business with Microsoft Cloud. I'm Vinendra Jain. People call me VJ. Easier to remember that way. I lead the channels business for SMB in Microsoft India. Let me start off first with sort of this may seem like a standard slide that usually organizations have to start with, but I personally take a lot of pride in terms of starting off with this conversation because it just reflects that, for me as well as a reminder when I am having this conversation or for any conversation that we have with customers or with the partner community across the world, it is always constantly about, how do we empower you to be able to achieve more? How do we empower your organization to achieve more? And clearly what we are trying to now hence do as part of the conversation today along with Ollie is to help you and your organization achieve more than what you were probably doing yesterday. Keeping that in context, I think we are all living in really unprecedented times. When I say unprecedented times, I think it can't be understated that a couple of months back where we were probably thinking we're going to be watching IPL or we were going to make some important investments before March 31st. Many of us were buying hardware or capital expenditure before March 31st year ends, and suddenly we were all sort of disrupted. I couldn't think of any individual or any organization that truly did not get disrupted. But in that disruption, there also seems to be tremendous opportunity for us, for each of us, to prepare for the new normal. And when we think about sort of what the opportunity really is, we can see that most of the customers, and especially you, the fact that you made time on an afternoon on a Friday to sort of attend this conversation along with Ollie and Microsoft is for you to sort of understand how are you, already either changing your mindset or you're thinking about changing mindset, right? So what's the trend that we've seen? We have really seen that there was, a clear impetus towards going for a mobile-ready environment. When I say mobile-ready, it was both the mobility to your experience and mobility of your application infrastructure, that going mobile-ready. And today, when we look at it, it's really remote-ready. Now there is a difference. You might think, what's the difference between mobile-ready and remote-ready? And you will be surprised that a lot of remote-ready is actually desktop application-heavy, not really mobile application. So what that means is the impetus that we saw for a web application or a mobile application, we suddenly start seeing desktop applications sort of making the move. The other very clear trend that we're seeing is, customers were sensitive about being able to access their applications, access their data anytime and anywhere. Whereas today, the anytime, anywhere has really become every time and everywhere. And excuse me, it's really about bringing the whole security element around it, because when I say every time and everywhere, I also mean home today. I didn't think of a home environment before this. There is a wireless network at home. I have to think about what kind of firewalls are in place, what kind of network security do I have in place, so that I'm sort of really truly able to migrate to a remote ready and an every time everywhere environment in a secure fashion. The third very larger trend that we are sort of seeing where customers are changing mindset again is we have sufficient digital momentum in India. India is one of the chosen economies, if you can think of it that way, where there is rapid trajectory growth on tele density, rapid trajectory growth on internet density increase, rapid sort of trajectory with respect to mobile density increase. And now we can, when we look at the digital adoption, the kind of sort of digital transformation that Microsoft has seen in the past 2 months, we probably didn't see it in the past 2 years. And this is again a statement from our CEO. So clearly, the plan that's coming now is digital rather than planning for digital. And then finally, what does all of this, culminate to is a lot of people were thinking about cloud. So they were running applications and they were thinking, yes, I should migrate to cloud, or I should think about my disaster recovery on cloud. Whereas now, especially the feedback that we got even from Ollie and from a lot of customers, cloud is just the new normal. It is just going to enable a lot of customers to live through these unprecedented times, to capitalize on new business opportunities, and just to kind of make the progress that they needed to make. Now, why are you here today? We are here today because there is one thing that you always had at the front end, thinking about how do we as an organization grow profits. But at the same time, today you're also in the conundrum of why I have to grow profits. I have to also think about how do I continue business. In many cases, it's a combination of both. In many cases, it's just one thing, right? And while you're trying to think about these two objectives, you're also thinking, you know what, there's so much change around that if I go with a certain direction today, what does that direction lead me tomorrow? What if there's more disruption? What if there is further lockdown? What kind of scenarios might come through? At the same time, what if things open up? And if I go and make an investment today and if it doesn't make sense for me tomorrow? So you're thinking about all of those things as well as you're here in this session today. Additionally, you're also thinking about communication has just now become the backbone. Unless I'm talking to my employees are talking to each other, my employees are talking to their customers, and from wherever they are, how can I make it secure? How can I feel secure about it? The other bit that we're thinking is running applications seamlessly. There was a time where we were thinking about disaster recovery, but in the new era, I'm thinking about, listen, no disruption should let my application sort of, not run. The seamlessness that I need as part of my culture towards customer service. And finally, we have to be realistic in terms of what's the investment that it is going to take. So yes, I want to grow profit. Yes, I want to continue business. Yes, I want to secure my communication strategy and my collaboration strategy. Yes, I want to run applications seamlessly, but I do not want to do it by burning cash or by investing more than what I am supposed to invest. So there is a lot of change that's happening, but these are sort of consistent for us. And as you're thinking about all of these questions and you're here today to get some of those questions answered, and I'm sure that Ollie team is going to answer most of them, what does today look like for you? So when you think about your platforms, let's take an example of your operating system where your employees are working. Are they legacy platforms or are they new platforms? Or are they hybrid, where some of them are legacy, some of them are new, critical applications are running on the right operating system? What's your technology strategy? Do you have a strategy in place? So are you making IT purchasing decisions on the spot? Are your employees using personal mobile devices when they're working? Are the computers or the hardware in your organization refreshed when they are dead, or are they refreshed to keep you relevant? And when you think about security, for instance, what's your endpoint strategy? What's your firewall strategy? What's your network security strategy? What's your VPN strategy? What's your email security strategy? What's your phishing, spamming, all of that strategy put together? Does it look like concerted and converging, or does it look like fragmented? And finally, what's your identity and access management strategy? How do you get people on board onto your application? How do you get them on board into your organization? How do you make sure the right people are accessing your applications? So what does today look like for you? And as the today looks for you a little disparate, may not necessarily always be disparate, but if it looks disparate, this is something that we are hearing from our customers, that they are worried about security threats and managing the risk to their business. You'll be amazed that an attacker stays for an average 200 days before even getting detected. A lot of you tell us that you need your employees to be productive, and you need them to be productive across every device that they use. Costs aren't going down. Clearly, a lot of your IT budget is actually being devoted to business as usual. And the most important thing that we're hearing from customers like you is you need to capitalize on new business opportunities quickly. Because once you do not, there's other folks or other competitors who are kind of making the move. Another huge implication of this whole unprecedented times story, or the new normal story, really is we've never really appreciated as much the fact that the world is now a giant network as much as we are appreciating it now. The importance of getting connected was never really as important or prominent as it is today. So how does it play for us? Way back in 2014, we said this. Work is no longer a location. Again, way back in 2014, it was said it's about the mobility of the experience. As work is no longer a location, how you taking work outside of office? And again, your data is mobile when you're doing all of this. This, by the way, was 6 years back. So what hits me even harder is as I am thinking about from 2014 to 2020, how have I really evolved, how my organization is really looking. So the tech challenges that you really have to think about when you're going through what Ollie team will kind of present is, how do you make sure that your technology that you're using today is always up to date? How do you make the most of your mobile and distributed workforce? How do you protect sensitive data? This is an extremely important line item, but a lot of times people ignore this. A lot of times people don't realize that this is not a complex subject as much as it is made out to be. And there are a lot of myths surrounding how do you keep protecting sensitive data. And finally, cyber threats and phishing schemes. Now, there is a responsibility that the software will have from a cyber threats and phishing schemes point of view, but there is also a responsibility that needs to be taken care of at the customer end, which is where partners like Ollie play an extremely important role in terms of making sure that you thought through the whole challenge piece. Now, as you're thinking about all of this content that kind of came through, and I apologize if I'm moving faster than I ought to, but because there's just 10 minutes that I can speak, I'm kind of making sure that you get the gist of the context as you jump into what we have with Ollie. But what is digital transformation? If you see on this slide, there are 15, boxes, 15 squares. Each square represents an industry. There is agriculture, there is pharma, there is automotive, there is healthcare, and each industry will interpret these two words, digital transformation, very differently. Some of them might think buying a computer or a phone for the first time. Some of them might think my ERP application has to now migrate to cloud. Not just does it have to migrate to cloud, I need to bring in that data and analyze that information and get that insights working for me. So digital transformation will mean different things for different people. It does not mean one size fits all approach. So what is it to me personally, digital transformation really is, it's not like a game of chess. It's not like this one single move that you will make. It's really a journey. So what you do today will have an implication tomorrow. What you do tomorrow will have an implication day after tomorrow. What you do today to become fast may not be fast enough in 2025. Hence, it's more like a journey that you have to treat the whole digital transformation as a conversation. At Microsoft, we talk about digital transformation really as 4 pillars: employees, customers, products, and operations. Why these 4 pillars? I think it's fairly simple. If you think about, these 4 pillars really, they are like these 4 pillars where there is a digital feedback loop. So when you look at customers, if you want to grow profits, if you want to continue business, what's your answer? You want more customers. Similarly, if you want to reduce your cost, what's your answer? You want your employees to work in a more productive manner. You want your operations to be more efficient. Similarly, if you think about growing profits, you want your operations to reduce costs. So, each of them are interrelated to each other. The most amazing part is there is a lot of data that's being captured between these 4 pillars. And this data can actually be used as insights to generate intelligence. And once you've generated that intelligence, that data can actually be used backwards to create business outcomes. For example, are my customers buying repeatedly from me? What's my customer relationship management strategy? Am I contacting customers enough, or do I drop customers after they contact me? How much time do my employees spend in customer conversations? How much time do my employees spend outside of office hours doing unproductive work? All of these can have an implication in terms of even my product design. Is that unproductive time spent in just understanding a product which is too complex today, and can I create a digital platform where I can actually download a lot of sales capability into my product? Or are my products some things that customers feel are outdated? So how do I basically get business outcomes truly going with the intent that all these signals or inputs should help me as an organization to grow profits, continue business? Now, again, and this is my second last slide, and I've got one more slide after this. as you're thinking about, some of these digital transformation pillars, you're thinking about what does your organization look like, and you'll think about, okay, when I go back today, I need to make sure I have a conversation with Ollie and make these changes in my organization. Before you make those changes, these are the 6 boxes that you have to definitely check before you make progress on your decision. Any new technology infrastructure just has to be by default low investment. There's no doubt about it. If you're going to spend crores of rupees or lakhs of rupees or thousands of rupees just to get something which isn't going to be long term enough for you really, or which isn't probably also going to keep pace with all the changes that are happening, it's not really low investment. It has to by default be easy to use. I don't think there are a lot of people who are going to debate on that. It has to be secure. We spoke about security, but this part of security is now pretty important given the context of all the changes that are happening around us. It has to be flexible. When I say flexible means what? You buy it today to do something. You should be able to do a lot of other things also with it. People should not say to you, no, you can't do this with this, you can only do this much with it. Or at least you could be able to do a few things, more than one. It has to be scalable. Why would you pay for something that you need in 2025 in 2020? You pay for what you need in 2025 in 2025, and you pay for what you need in 2020. And the only way to achieve it is by consuming what you need in 2020 only in 2020. So in a way, what I'm trying to say is you scale your IT infrastructure as you scale your business. And finally, compliant. What do I mean by compliant here? Think of it this way, you're a customer. Your job is to do business. Your job is to acquire more customers. So you work with software, you work with hardware, and you're wondering, whether this is a new technology infrastructure you've invested in, does it satisfy the needs of your customers? So for example, if you're serving or if you're in the healthcare space, by default, any IT consultant or any sort of, cloud partner or even Ollie for that matter will tell you this, your IT infrastructure has to be HIPAA compliant. So these are things that, should come by default. And what's the one answer to these 6 checks really? It is truly cloud. But the reason why I've been a little selfish and written Microsoft Cloud is just the way Microsoft puts all of these things together. It's very different. You can find a lot of pay-as-you-use services out there. You may find services which are always updated, but they may not necessarily have the comprehensiveness of all the services that Microsoft offers. It may be accessible everywhere, but there is a hybrid opportunity as well with Microsoft Cloud. It may be secure, but no one beats the 90 plus certifications that Microsoft has. No one beats the amount of money that Microsoft puts in with respect to the investments that we put in ensuring the security of our data centers, which is about $1 billion. Now, these are the 3 approaches really to cloud as you will kind of think about and approach the conversation today with Ollie. And I would leave it to to your sort of broadly to think of it this way. If you're already running an application, say a Dynamics application or any other alternate ERP application, that ERP application can completely run from cloud. What you're doing is you're hosting your ERP application on cloud. So that's called infrastructure as service. And most of you will also sit in a space where you will say, listen, I do not have any ERP which I'm using today. I want to think about an ERP, but I don't want to be managing the infrastructure. And Ollie will come back and tell you, fair enough, you've got a software as a service, which we can actually provision for you. Think about Microsoft 365, that's another software as a service that Microsoft has. Right, and finally, some of you will be developers. You'll be building your own mobile application, web application, and desktop application. And for all of you who are doing that today, you need a platform to build, which is platform as a service, really. Now, why I say Microsoft Cloud in the earlier slide is because this position that Microsoft has, where it not just fulfills the 4 digital transformation pillars and the needs of how do you make sure you've got the right digital transformation ingredients happening in employees, in customers, in operations, and in products, but also this uniqueness of having a strong position on infrastructure as service, platform as service, and software as service meant to serve businesses, which just changes the trajectory of how you look at cloud as an alternative. This is primarily the reason why we have such a high sort of customer base. More than 95% of Fortune 500 companies really not just being hosted on Microsoft. I would say this, that they're inventing using Microsoft Azure. And if you look at, no further than India, State Bank of India, HDFC Bank, Fortis Healthcare, these are some, well-known names that are actually using the Microsoft Cloud platform as they're going and inventing and serving customers. Very recently, Kolkata High Court is now started using the Teams software to actually run through cases. Now, this is my last slide, and this is a free sort of website that's available, portal from Microsoft Learn. You can just go do a web search and you'll find this. But anyone out there who is wanting to kind of figure out what's cloud fundamentals or wanting to also build their capability, this is largely targeted towards the IT and the developers community. You should definitely look at this. There's all content that's available, including certification content that's absolutely free of cost. So with that, I'll sort of lay the context to allow Ollie to kind of come through. My coordinates are there. Vinendra Jain, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn or on Microsoft.com email address as well. And I'll stay on in the presentation to take any questions and answers at the end as well. Thank you. So Vishal, over to you.
Thank you, Vinay. Thank you, Vijay. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. So what we are going to cover today is largely going to be how can we begin this journey towards the digital transformation of trying to migrate some of our on-prem applications or workloads to the cloud. So that is what we've done is we've structured it in a way that we would first take up the cloud versus on-prem comparison. There have been a certain amount of trend that we've seen in terms of the choice that people are making towards adoption of cloud. What are the considerations that they are taking into consideration in choosing the cloud or adopting cloud? What would have, so we'll cover these along with the key customer concerns when it comes to adopting cloud. The challenges that we have heard some of our early adopters who had latched on to cloud in terms of what they faced when they were on an on-prem environment, and what is the advantages that we see when it comes to the cloud along with the managed services. We'll also talk about the security and controls, although Vijay has touched upon all these aspects in a very comprehensive manner. But since our session agenda is largely of trying to migrate on-prem to cloud, so we'll try and address this because this becomes one of the key concerns for a lot of our customers as well as organizations when they are moving or willing to shift or wanting to shift to cloud. Then there are certain pricing models that are available as when one embarks upon this journey to cloud. There are various options then how we can initiate the journey. So we will talk a little bit about the various pricing models that are available and what could be the engagement models. And what we have done for this particular session is we've just picked up one small use case of, say, a majority of the customers who are logged into this session would be using the Microsoft Dynamics NAV platform, is what my assumption is. So what we've done as a use case is we've picked up a typical NAV migration story. What does it take? How long does it take? And how does it culminate into your cloud story? So towards the end, we also have Mr. Jay Majumdar, who is a senior manager IT from Travel Food Services. He's been with us and he was the key person involved in managing the entire migration to cloud for Travel Food Services across India. So we would want to have a few minutes with him in terms of sharing his experience towards the end of this session. So obviously I put this slide up intentionally, trying to figure out whether towards the end of this session, or at least my attempt would be to, interpret this image that you see in the form of, are we seeing the money go up the cloud or is it coming down from the cloud? So this is what we would try and address. So do we save more or do we spend more in our journey to cloud? If we were to look at it from a typical cost perspective. So when you look at a cloud versus on-prem comparison, and because I see a lot of the customers who are logged into the session today, they would be from a typical mid-size organizations. That these organizations would have investments made on-prem infrastructure already. But those investments are either some of them have recently bought some hardware infrastructure, or they are in the process of procuring, or some of them have reached are in the stages of reaching end of life as far as the hardware infra is concerned. So when we compare a typical on-prem versus cloud infrastructure, So the left-hand side, the green is the various boxes that I've put in, which represent the components that come in when we compare the cloud option. So cloud, obviously, we all know is an OpEx model based offering. We do not have an entry barrier at all when it comes to beginning the journey. The pricing is spot. So whatever is the compute that we would want to, provision the environment, we would have a spot pricing to it, and it is all pay as you use model. The benefit here, obviously, we'll talk about the benefits in the subsequent slide, but it is also something which gives me the flexibility of, scaling up and down as far as the cloud is concerned. And the recurring investment that you do in terms of the compute or infrastructure on cloud is all the costs that one can talk of. Obviously, since it does not have any upfront investment, so that gives a definite advantage to the cloud option. And then when we look at Microsoft's or any other cloud, when we talk of engaging on a long-term commitment, the price points are way lucrative when the customers commit. On the contrary, when we look at a typical on-prem infrastructure, we see large upfront investments going in. The annuity cost is the cost of the maintenance of the infrastructure. The scalability becomes a concern whereas if you want to, there are situations where you may not need that kind of compute and you want to scale down, that option never there. It's only upwards. And even if you were to scale up the on-prem infra, the complete supply chain process of procuring and provisioning is a long run, it has a huge lead time, and it is capital intensive. And when we look at upgrades and updates of patches, typically in a cloud environment, customers would have I would say that it's backed by managed services where minor upgrades and updates are applied as a part of that managed services. In a on-prem environment, we look at a lot of upgrades being procrastinated and delayed for future, and at one point in time it becomes a massive project in itself, causing disruption. So we'll touch upon these points in the subsequent slides. And we feel that the SME sector today, the way we look at it with the current situation and also with the digital transformation journey becoming one of the key pivots around which organizations are driving growth, the SME sector has been found to be more nimble and agile and adaptive to the cloud journey, wherein the large organizations, while they do have investments on cloud as far as certain workloads are concerned, but they are also very deeply invested when it comes to on-prem infra. So the trend is the SME is latching onto cloud in a much bigger way as compared to the Fortune 500 or the other large organization when it comes to infra as a service or lifting and shifting certain on-prem workloads to the cloud. So what did we experience, based on the deployments that we've done over the last few years on cloud, that the customers have the key considerations for shift to the cloud is hybrid. We have not seen too many customers willing to completely lift and shift to cloud. And it has been a multi-step process wherein some of them, so these are the three possible options of shifting to the cloud. One is the architecture spanning. I'll talk about each one by one. The other is the use case specific and the third is the multi-cloud. Under architecture spanning, what we've seen is a lot of customers who have on-prem ERP applications or line of business applications. They would have to, they can opt for small workloads on cloud. Something like I've given an example here. So there are huge set of structured and unstructured data residing within the organization on on-prem systems. Now there could be a decision to drive an analytics using that data, so that just that analytics piece can be picked up as a service on cloud using maybe a Microsoft Power BI option which is a good option. So I can have the complete data warehouse as option one residing within the premise, and I can pick up data and give you the visualization reports and analytics using the Power BI platform. It can also happen the other way around, where I can bring up the data onto the cloud, create a data lake or a data warehouse there, and generate the needed analytics. So obviously the key consideration would be the volume and the direction of movement of data when it comes to the first choice. In the second case, we have experienced this too with a lot of our NAV customers, is they had started off with the dev and test environment on cloud. So once they did that, and because they already had on-prem infra, so they decided that they would use it for the production, but for the dev and test, they would want it on the cloud. And as and when they went live, with over a period of say 6 to 8 months, they then moved the production to cloud as well. Some of our customers who had invested deeply in on-prem infrastructure just opted for DR as a service on cloud. Now, obviously, when we talk of disaster recovery, there are various options available there also, which is either a hot DR or a cold DR, depending on the kind of industry you belong to, and how much of a downtime can you really afford. So these are the considerations that customers typically took into account while choosing the pieces of use case specific scenarios. And the third, which option where we've seen customers latch on to cloud is, so there are customers who would be using some cloud-based application. It could be an Oracle HCM, it could be an SFDC CRM, and it is a Microsoft Dynamics NAV ERP, which is on-prem. So while there are two applications on cloud, and when I say CRM, it could be a Microsoft cloud-based CRM, it could be an SFDC, it could be any third-party cloud-based CRM. It could also be any human capital, cloud-based human capital management system, but the infrastructure for ERP is on-prem. So we've seen a lot of customers go into this multi-cloud option where they're also migrating the ERP workload to cloud, and all these three clouds then talk to one another. So that's another choice that we've seen where customers have latched on to multiple clouds and hence choosing the best of the breed platforms while doing so. By the way, in case you have any questions, specific questions, please put it down on the chat window. I also have Sandeep, my colleague Sandeep, who would try and address that through the chat. And if not, we can take those questions up one by one towards the end of the session. So what were our experience of the key customer concerns when we went to them for their cloud journey, and when we spoke to them? Most of them were very concerned about the security aspects of their data. And they had the fear that my data is on the cloud and I do not have access to it, and maybe too many people will have access to it. So those were primary concerns of some of our customers. There was also a concern with regards to the vendor lock-in. So they felt that if I were to choose, say for example, an Olitech or a Microsoft for the cloud towards my migration to cloud, what happens to my data? Do I get logged on to the service provider and the cloud service provider, or is there an option for me to shift base if tomorrow something doesn't work out? So the third is the compatibility with on-prem applications. A lot of customers had this fear that some of my on-prem applications would not be, it would not be feasible to migrate to cloud. And obviously there is a business disruption fear in their minds too, that this migration to cloud journey might cause stoppages and business disruption, and I might, it might impact my revenue, it might impact my customer experience. So I would not want to embark upon a big disruption as far as my running business is concerned, which is obviously using the on-prem infrastructure. And last was the cost concerns with regards to the, typical CFOs would do a typical TCO, 5-year TCO analysis, wherein they would derive the cost of the on-prem infrastructure, the tax and the tax benefits to it, add the tax depreciation benefits to it, and then come up with a cost which would tend to be much lower than a typical cloud infrastructure as a service or platform as a service cost. So we would try and address each of these concerns. So when the in the security and governance area particularly, we feel that I'll give a very simple example that we keep quoting to our customers. Today, when we look at cloud, our money is safer at the banks and the safety deposit or the lockers of the banks than at our places. That is the kind of comparison when we talk of Microsoft. It has 3 huge data centers in India and has the state-of-art security in terms of the various applications. So obviously Sandeep will talk about the security area in the subsequent slide. And when we talk of vendor lock-in, yes, there would be a definite amount of commitment required for a customer to a particular cloud service provider to move to cloud, to initiate the journey. However, there is no restriction as far as the customer is concerned to continue with the same service provider. So in case a customer is unhappy with the services, the data as far as his data is concerned is secured on the cloud because he has all access to it. Two, Microsoft and various other similar public cloud service providers provide customers this option to switch partners in case they are not happy with the services of a particular partner. So at any point in time, the lock-in doesn't really impact the business, and there is no, I would say, disruption that may cause. So that concern does get addressed because all the cloud service providers and the OEMs are aware of this situation, and hence they have given this provision and the freedom for customers to choose between players. And obviously compatibility with on-prem. Now the current context of today's session was Dynamics NAV, and if there are any other Microsoft on-prem products that any of you are using, we have already done more than 50 to 60 successful migrations. And let us tell you and assure you on this front that the compatibility issues have not happened irrespective of what version of Microsoft platforms were they on. So there have been situations where there have been multiple databases that a customer was using. We have migrated multiple databases to a into a SQL PaaS environment, as well as the SQL VM environment. So we've taken up all sorts of migration activities when it comes to the Microsoft business applications. As far as
Vishal, as far as NAV is concerned, because we're going to focus on the NAV at this point in time, we have migrated 2009, 2014, 16, and Business Central on-prem version on Azure. So as far as the compatibility of the applications are concerned, because at this point in time we are talking about Navision, so most of the versions of Navision as old as 2009 that has been migrated and it works fine. Yeah, Vishal.
Yeah, so I think the business disruption part, to a certain extent, there has been a perception that in a running environment, changing tires in a moving car is very difficult, is what customers had perceived. But what we've done is we've done migration of live NAV environments or ERP environments to the cloud in flat 5 days, out of which there was a cutover of just 1 day required. So a downtime of a night, or Friday night, that is required. So we have covered these aspects in subsequent slides, but we have just tried to pick up the concerns that our customers spoke to us about and try to give inputs to what has been our experience for each of these concerns. So I think what we've seen as a, this I have already addressed in a previous slide, but I'll just try and delve into it a little deeper. We've talked about huge upfront investment when it comes to key challenges in an on-prem environment. The implementation process can take significantly longer time due to dependency on the hardware procurement. We've touched upon this. Now, obviously, scaling up and down becomes very difficult when it comes to so scaling up would require procurement. Scaling down, obviously, it is only upwards. We can't do that. At times when you are handling a peak load, when there is, say, for example, month-end closures happening, and this is something we've seen across our NAV customers across industry segments, wherein during the month-end closures, the number of bills or the invoices that had to be posted were 10 times a typical workload that they would have in the other days. So what would typically happen is it would create a level of bottleneck because the infrastructure would be sized and portioned, that is on-prem, for a certain amount of load, and during the month ends when the load used to increase, the infrastructure was found wanting. So that handling of the load required several provisioning to be done, more hardware to be added. So that peak load handling was not so easy when it came to on-prem environment, unless there are customers who would have invested huge amount of monies in buying infrastructure over and above what the base requirement was. So typically people do that, but at times the transaction volume and load, when that increases manyfold, even that succumbs. We've also seen that when it comes to the cloud, there is a high maintenance cost of infrastructure because some of them reach end of life because technology is changing rapidly. And when you are looking at maintenance, we've had experience of customers coming to us saying that, oh, the contract was for 3 years. After the 3rd year, when the vendor came back for a renewal of AMC, he was charging me a whole lot of money for just renewing the AMC because now I was stuck. There were certain additional hardware which had to be procured, like a storage device or a drive or something like that, which was then getting sold at a very, very high premium, despite the customer negotiating a very, very good rate in the initial purchases. So they were like taken to task when it came to buying, augmenting, and the renewing the AMC of their infrastructure.
Or scaling up the existing infrastructure. What happens, what we all do is that, when we have to procure the hardware, we definitely squeeze the OEM and try to get the best possible deals, either by negotiating or getting the competitive quotes. But once you close on that particular deal, I'm sure that, if over the period of time, probably a year or so, you feel that my application load and peaks are going very high, and I need to scale up the particular hardware, that is where the OEM will charge you. If you need to increase the hard disk or increase the memory or a controller or a redundant fan, that's where scaling up becomes really tough at times, and it becomes very difficult for us to really think that what do I need to do next. Yeah, Vishal.
So I think we've touched upon it, but it is important to understand that a lot of our customers did give us this feedback that when they had that in-house infrastructure, some of these updates and upgrades which the OEM would typically release for a say SQL Server or an OS, these were getting delayed, saying that we would take that up later on, and as and when various such updates and upgrades came in, it piled up into a one big project, and hence it became time consuming, and it required a lot of downtime, and at times there were also competency issues where there was a dependence on a third-party vendor. So I think all those that we spoke about becomes a level of gives us a level of advantage when we look at a typical cloud environment. Here we are saying for a use case that we'll talk about, how much time does it take for me to lift and shift a customer to cloud, whether it is his production environment, whether it is just DR as a service, whether it is just a particular workload like a BI enablement on cloud using the in-house data that he has or the various structured, unstructured data that he has. Is there an investment? Yes, there is a negligible amount of initial investment that is required to get the subscription up and running, but it is very low and it is hardly any cost. And the best part is that the moment you look at a situation where the data volume rises, transaction volume rises towards the end of the month, towards the end of a season, at an end of season sale environment or situation, the scaling up and ensuring the scale up and down at a peak load time, scaling up and also scaling down when the need is not there for the infra, that flexibility is permitted, and the apportionment, so accordingly the cost saving happens there. So as this is backed by a managed services contract with the service provider, so all kinds of updates, upgrades, enhancements, performance tuning that has to be done when we look at, say, typically infrastructure as a service, those are done periodically. So all periodic maintenance jobs are being done on the environment by the managed services team. Hence, it is never a situation where there is a major upgrade that has to be done and there is a downtime required. At least as far as I am concerned, there are a lot of customers we've delivered an infra as a service option, and I have not heard them talk about a long delayed downtime. There are other associated services on the cloud available under the Microsoft Azure framework. We can actually enable some of those services pretty easily as far as the AI and ML capabilities are concerned. We've already talked about DR. DR is the easiest thing to do, and today when we look at DR, a lot of the SME segment, when we talk of taking backups, I have seen my customers taking regular backups, but not many customers have actually restored those backups back again and tried to see if that really works in the desired fashion. So while backups are being taken, they are probably not tested, and even if they are tested, they are probably done at the same location. They have not. There is probably not enough infrastructure or investment being made to drive the DR function in the right way. Whereas Microsoft provides this as a service, whether you want to have a storage location and you would only be allocated the VMs once a disaster is declared. So that would take a day or half a day or a few hours of provisioning, and your systems are back up and running. Or you would have those VMs on standby. So the moment a disaster is declared, you are immediately moved to a live environment on Azure, on the cloud. And we'll talk about the managed services support. So when we look at managed services, say for example, if you were to take up any particular workload on cloud, it is backed by a 24/7 help desk of the cloud service provider, someone like Olitech, and there are several others. So what does our Azure or cloud services team does the network monitoring. So they monitor the performance of your application. They do the server monitoring. They do the SQL monitoring, SQL maintenance, and Windows updates. So maybe Sandeep, you can explain each of them if you want to in detail.
Sure. So what happens that in any of the infrastructure, even if you have in your own data center or server room, so-called, or there are certain parameters which we keep monitoring, and there are most of the places you will see that there are some of the parameters which are monitored, but most of them are not monitored, because we have some people who log into the server and they keep on looking into the probably disks or network. So wherein a company like Olitech, managed service provider like Olitech, we have invested heavily into the monitoring systems, and there are monitoring systems available within the Azure, wherein we keep monitoring the network front end and the back end of Azure. We keep monitoring the performance of the server. What is the CPU utilization? What is the memory utilization? How are the NIC cards performing? How is the controller performing of the particular VM? How is the disk performing? What are the IOPS? How much storage is left on the disk? So we keep on monitoring these systems, and we keep on getting alerts in case there is any deviation, and then we take a call with the customer in case, for example, if the hard disk size is to be increased. We speak to the customer that this is what the size is. Do you want me to increase the capacity of the hard disk? And we can increase the capacity on the fly. Or if there are certain issues which can be managed by ourselves, even without informing the customer, we take care of that. For example, for SQL monitoring, we make sure that regular maintenance of the particular SQL, because for Navision, SQL becomes the heart of the whole application. And if the SQL does not perform the way it has to, then you will see that most of the users will start complaining that SQL performance is not working. My application is not performing. It's because there are certain maintenance tasks as per the best practices of Microsoft. They need to be performed on this particular database, and in the conventional method setup, we see that most of these are not taken care of, because when we talk about SMEs, you will not have a particular DBA in the organization who understands the scripting, who understands what data is all about, what database is all about. We at Oli make sure that your database, the Navision database, we make sure that the health of the database is perfect. We run maintenance tasks, whether it is defragmentation, whether it is update stat, whether it is indexing, and we keep monitoring that. It's not that we have created tasks and they run on its own, but we always monitor. If the task is not run, why is it not run? And then we make sure that we provide the exact root cause to the customer as to why it did not perform. Similarly, for Windows Update, that every month Microsoft comes out with the patches, and your systems have to be patched. As Vishal pointed out a couple of times, that we've seen that the Windows updates do not happen regularly, and because the reason for that is people are a little scared about doing it on their hardware, because at times what we feel that we have this so-called Murphy's law. It applies wherein the system is running for quite a long time, and when you try to reboot it, it doesn't come up, right? And that is where all of us get into panic, and because my ERP is heart of the organization, and if I do not make my application up and live, say within 15 minutes or 10 minutes, I may not be able to survive, or I cannot make the truck which is outside on the gate move out of my building. Here we have it practice. We simulate and then we deploy, and that is how we keep updating, we keep informing, and we keep monitoring the whole infrastructure and give it to you uptime 24/7, depending on what kind of service you have availed for. Yes, Vishal.
Yeah. Excuse me.
So as far as I think Vijay earlier said that we talk about security being one of the major concerns, and when we talk about COVID-19, you see there are so much of spam being generated, ransomware being generated, billions and billions of dollars are getting there's a theft of billions of dollars. We make sure that the data centers, wherever the applications are hosted, they are complying to best of the breed certifications. Whether you need SOC 1, whether you are SOC 1, SOC 2, SOC 3, HIPAA compliant, 27001, or any other, DPR, any other certifications. The Azure data centers across India have all the certifications in place. So when we say that the data which is meant for you and it is your data, we mean it, that the data which is for you will be only accessed by you, nobody else. That is what we assure of. At the same time, you have the option of picking and choosing what kind of a firewall you would need to deploy in case you want to have all the infrastructure behind the firewall. So we have use cases wherein we have used firewalls which are hosted out of Azure by Microsoft, and we have customers who have procured their own firewalls, and we have deployed them on Azure. So it purely depends the way you want to configure your infrastructure. It is your infrastructure. It is the way you want to configure infrastructure. The Microsoft provides malware protection within the whole infrastructure. It also, to some extent, it also provides you from the ransomware protection by using some of the services called Azure Backup Services, wherein the image backups are encrypted and they are kept in a vault which is encrypted, which means that at any given point in time, when you have image backups and if there is an attack on a server and it is encrypted, you have possibility of, and you have the image which is with you, and you can restore it within minutes, and you are up and running. You have options of using web services, terminal services, secure terminal services, creating tunnels with Azure VPN gateways, creating tunnels with your firewalls, whichever firewall you have. We have tested it with most of the standard firewalls, whether it is Sophos, CyberRoam, Checkpoints of the world, Miraki's of the world, SonicWall, FortiGate. We have created tunnels for our customers, and they have made sure they have given the access to the application using tunnels, whether it is point to site connectivity or site to site connectivity. We have made sure that their infrastructure is safe, secure from all the external threats. Microsoft keeps on updating their infrastructure, as they have dedicated more than 3,500 security professionals across the world. They keep on working on it. They keep on enhancing the security, and they keep on giving us the best of the breed solution, whether it is infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service.
So when we look at the current available pricing models or cloud pricing models that we've seen most of our customers go for. So what we've done is just skip, and I'll now, obviously we are running short of time. So we'll just quickly touch upon this area because we are touching the commercials and the TCO compute in the subsequent slides. The customer may choose a node-based typical infra as a service option. They can go as a performance based, where there is PaaS SaaS offerings where you have a per user per month kind of a payout, or you have a platform as a service, or there are certain services which are available on cloud which are on consumption based, which they opt for, and they pay for those services based on how much they have consumed. Something like a billing app where they're per invoice, or a fraud protection app where for every invoice that is checked or every online transaction that is checked, there is a bill that, or there is a payment that a customer has to make to the service. So there are these three various options of cloud engagement, and we see what kind of systems do these are best for. So we look at operational and transactional systems. Typically, that is where our current today's context is mostly based on. Though we can go for both node-based and performance metric-based, which is PaaS-based offering. For dashboards, also these two are the best choices. For any reporting platforms, these first two are the best choices. So we've kind of built for you what could be the various components or the cloud pricing models, and it could be a mix and match. So while your production environment to cloud could be the node-based pricing, and the dev and test environment could be on the PaaS-based model, where you do a SQL DTU-based compute at a very low cost.
Right.
When we look at a typical TCO comparison, so what we've done is we've picked up the cost of most of our customers who've invested on infrastructure as a service. So we've just done a TCO for infrastructure as a service, and we've looked at the cost year on year for a period of 5 years. And we felt that, if you see the trend that has been seen towards the end of 5 years, the TCO for an on-prem deployment turns out to be slightly higher than infrastructure as a service. And trust me, when I say that, this is just the cost comparison. But when it comes to the service and the service quality and the offering in terms of the various benefits that cloud brings, cost is just one small parameter. It just doesn't have to always be the cost consideration, which should, compel a customer to move towards a cloud or not. There are various other factors which should be taken into consideration, which we've already touched upon in our previous slides. So for you as a customer, what could be the possible engagement options? We've talked about all of this. These could be the 4 possible engagement options as of now that I can think of. They could be a small project of DR as a service, or a dev and test environment on cloud, or a BI on cloud, or a typical lift and shift on-prem to cloud. And we can explore this together. So now I'm coming to the use case of moving NAV from on-prem to infra cloud. So what is the prerequisites that we would need from some of you, if some of you were to, look at a typical lift and shift of on-prem infra to cloud infra? So obviously these are the things that we would need from you to be able to, size up the time, duration, and also the compute that is required on cloud to be provisioned to run your platform successfully. So we would need the NAV build and version, SQL version, production database size, number of databases, what is the database server console with admin rights, you would need that, and the latest SQL backup. So once we get this information, what does the NAV migration activity look like? So this is a 5-day job for us. That is how much we take to move some of our most complex customers to the simpler ones, there has been, plus minus a day or two. This has largely been our average experience, that we have been able to do it in 5 days flat from an on-prem to a cloud migration. And these were the steps that they had to do, we had to do in terms of provisioning the environment right from onboarding. So defining the application network architecture, provisioning the infrastructure on Azure, defining the configuration of NAV and SQL databases, because Olitech today has upwards of 500 customers in India and globally, wherein the majority of these customers are on NAV, and our specialization came from that, where we did a whole lot of NAV migration to cloud, and we experienced it in a way that now it is all template based. It hardly takes us any time. We need those prerequisite details, and we are up and running in flat 5 days.
The only thing, in the whole process, while we are doing provisioning in the back end, there is no downtime in the front. You still are operational, you still are working. The only downtime I would need is that, and when I would say that you stop your transactions, is that probably Friday night or Saturday night, you give me the backup. We load it onto the Azure, restore it on the SQL Server, do the test, and give it back to you. That is what it takes us to migrate your business application from on-prem to cloud.
So if you look at a typical deployment architecture, this is just a sample that we picked up for the people who are from technical background who've logged into this call. Sandeep, would you want to quickly explain this very quickly?
Quickly I'll say this is typically a typical diagram of a large customer, but you can still create this. Wherein I say that I have NAV servers on load balancers, although the application per se does not support load balancing. It's not load, but I still can build it behind the load balancer of Azure. Similarly, terminal services. I can still build a terminal server under the load balancer and still have a single server. So whole idea of showing you this is that I have a flexibility of horizontally scaling as and when required. And I can vertically scale also. I create an environment for you which has a flexibility of horizontal scale and vertical scale. It's not that, I build something for you and then I'm stuck. Now I can't do anything. So if you see, I have created different islands and they have their own load balancers, which means today if you start with 10 users, I still build you behind the load balancer. You don't need to pay for it. It's free. I give you one server, but tomorrow when you are 50 users, there is no change in the front end. And in the back end, I just insert a particular server and you still are operational. There is no downtime. There is no disruption. It's as you go. And my load balancer will support, will help me throwing the user to different servers based on the configuration which I do on the load balancer, based on the CPU utilization or the memory or the disk or the IOPS. It does all the calculations on the load balancer and it throws the user to the least loaded server. But for you, you don't have to worry about, oh my God, I need to change the IP address now. No, you don't have to. You still come to the load balancer and then load balancer does its job. So this is typically a architecture diagram which can start with 5 users and go up to 500 users. It's the only way that, the only thing what you have to add is keep on adding these blue servers and you are operational.
So we also try to, take an average out of the current price points from various customers of various size and scale that we have. So what you see in front of you are various of 3 customer segments that we picked up. So obviously the specific price will be derived after we get to know the storage and the number of exact user count. Yeah. But by generalizing the user count in 3 slabs, we felt that this is the kind of price points that one migration in terms of infrastructure as a service when it comes to lift and shift of the NAV environment to cloud comes in. So obviously when we talk of DR as a service, or we talk of test and dev as a service on cloud, those would be at a much lesser cost, and we can, if any one of you is interested, may put it on the chat window and we can respond to it, or we can take it up as an offline conversation. Yeah. So I think here is where we introduce Mr. Jay Mozumdar with you. He's been one of the key people involved in the success of the complete lift and shift that we did for travel food services. Hi, Jay.
Hello, Vishal.
How are you, sir? I'm good, sir.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming into this session, sir. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So I think just let me introduce and set the context. We'll have a 2-minute conversation with Jay. So Jay has been instrumental in bringing the complete travel food services organization from a very deeply invested on-prem infrastructure to pure cloud today. The journey began with a simple, setting up of a test and dev environment of NAV. And then from then onwards, it's now history. We have the complete NAV production on cloud. We have, which is supporting almost 9 to 10 locations, and there are upwards of 200 users. Then we have the complete line of business applications. And I think, Jay, if you can just quickly help us understand the initial part of the journey and what were the typical challenges or anything that you would like to contribute to this forum in terms of your learnings from this experience with migration to cloud.
Sure. Actually, we started this journey in around 2017, and we took it from there that we will be moving out to cloud because the ongoing operating system and infrastructure cost is going higher because of the end of life licenses of both hardware and the software. The management was becoming an issue and cost thereof. So we plan to move to the cloud first. So in that term, what we have planned that we will be moving and we will be going to a new application, which is an ERP, which is Navision. And from there, we started our journey and look after the different cloud solutions. And we found that Azure is the best one to go with, point number one. And then we tried to find out a partner who can work with us. And now we are working with Oli for all these days, and we become a family right now. So in that sense, on a very first occurrence, we gave them a challenge to the Oli to give us an infrastructure to provide us a development environment, whereas we can start working out with Navision, with our British partner, so that we can chalk out the plans and progress. And Oli surprisingly took that challenge and built the architecture with Navision in 24 hours. And we were surprised. We were amazed. So, and that particular service is going on from that day till now, and I hope that we will be continuing this relation in future as well. The challenges for us, Vishal was rightly saying, is that security and multi-tenant VMs, right? So when we came into the cloud, we rightly understood that Azure is maintaining the whole lot of security from their side. And there is a responsibility of customer also in that we have to secure the VMs in terms of Windows update in regular manner and with an antivirus patch. And that's it. So it is that kind of a nicely managed VM we are having. And till now, there is absolutely zero downtime from the day one. Zero downtime. And apart from that, we are facing some problems in terms of accessing the application because there are some user hits in the month end, and we found that the CPU utilization was going high. And in a day, we took a decision that we will increase the number of VMs, and we will use a load balancer so that user does not have any problem to access the Navision. They will be accessing it as they are doing it. And it was done in a flash. And also Sandeep has helped us to find out why Navision was working slow. It was we were facing this slowness for a day or two. And Sandeep came up with his own observation that we have to make some certain changes in the SQL database and log files in terms of IOPS so that it runs smoother, and it is working nice from then on. So as a whole, I must say that Travel Food Services in terms of Azure and in terms of service from Oli, there is as such no complaint from us, and we are very happy with that, with Azure infrastructure and with Oli service. And for others, though I'm a customer, but for others, I should say that Azure has so many options and so many features to work with. It is just a beginning. They are having infrastructure as a service, they have a platform as a service, they have software as a service like Dynamics NAV 365 is coming up. So you can use that infrastructure of Azure and you can sleep tight. You do not have to worry about anything.
Thank you so much, Jay. Appreciate your kind words.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks for the kind words, Jay.
So I think with this, these were some of our early adopters of cloud. If you look at the logos here, I've just taken up a slide and just tried to put it here to tell you that we've serviced industries across industry segments, customers across industry segments, and some of them are our customers, NAV customers, and some of them are not our NAV customers. They may be a third-party NAV customer had opted to go with us for their Azure and for the cloud automation because they felt that we understand this migration story better as compared to many others. So we closing the call. Thank you everybody for your time. We'll look forward to hearing from you soon. So I have put in my our email ID here in case anyone wants to reach out to me personally. I'll put mine on the chat window. You can take my.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.